Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and this is, as was mentioned, as Colin mentioned, I'm a professor at UCSD, and fortunate enough to work in this particular institute, the Qualcomm Institute, which is in the center of the School of Engineering at the UCSD campus. And I direct a laboratory. I'm sort of the designated researcher here at this opening session. I direct a laboratory that works on a variety of health-related issues across the entire age spectrum. And our research has been funded by essentially all of the major entities that fund the type of research that we do: NIH, NSF, CDC, National Cancer Institute, and others. Our research is guided by an ecological model of thinking, and this is no better summed up than by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, but the fact that a large measure, in fact, perhaps most of what contributes to our health, happens where we live, learn, work, and play. So how do we understand these issues related to our health? The traditional ways that we've done this have been through randomized controlled trials or through periodic surveys and assessments that have been done across populations, either in person or via paper or web-based approaches. Digging into medical records to get an understanding of what influences health, or drawing biomarkers every now and then to understand these influences. Well, times are changing, and changing substantially. We now have data that we track voluntarily. The Pew Foundation earlier this year came up with data that suggests that 20% of people now in the US are using some form of objective technology to track their data, and another 30% are tracking it in some other way. We share these data with others, and we learn from others about what these data mean. And then there are also enormous amounts of data being captured on us by third parties around our everyday lives, the swipe cards that we use at the grocery stores and others. So there's this vast ecosystem of diverse and expanding applications, services, and tools that are capturing and collecting data on us. These data raise lots of questions for researchers such as myself with respect to how to use them in the area of health. What about their quality, their validity, their reliability, their dependability, especially if we're to use these data in just-in-time interventions? They raise many methodological issues, including making causal inference from lots of cross-sectional data in ways that traditional clinical and epidemiological researchers might not trust. Ethical issues, privacy, informed consent, a variety of issues related to this, and who owns the data. How these data might challenge our current models of scientific inquiry. These are profound questions that relate to whether or not we need other methods by which we can look into this, such as citizen science or open data or data commons or other approaches. The usefulness of these data to address health disparities. More than one speaker this morning has commented on the crushing burdens of healthcare costs and health disparities and other issues. We have to find solutions to these. Can these data help us do this? And then access to these data. Very, very important issue. Most of these data are held within companies who might or might not have an interest in using this for public benefit research, for the Commonwealth, if you will. So, what are we doing about this? Well, I'm happy to say that we've started a project with the support of the Pioneer Portfolio of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in my institute. It's a joint effort between a group of researchers led by me at UC San Diego and a group at UC Irvine and the Social Computing Group called the Health Data Exploration Project. And in this project, we've comprised a board of advisors and distinguished individuals. Linda Avey, the co-founder of 23andMe, Tim O'Reilly, one of the godfathers of the open software movement, Hugo Campos, sort of an e-patient who's been doing a lot of interactions with Medtronic these days, Bob Kaplan, a close colleague of mine who's currently the head of the Office of Behavioral and Social Sciences Research at the National Institutes of Health, and Gary Wolf, one of the co-founders of the Quantified Self movement. So with these advisory board members, we've started a 6-month study comprised of online surveys of individuals, researchers, and companies involved in this space, key informant interviews with key folks in this space, and then we're also gathering lots of data from lots of sources to sort of wrap our minds around this whole new area of potential research. And I want to share with you some preliminary results from this morning. We've dug into this a little bit. What do people think about these kinds of data, and how might these be brought into the world of research that those of us in academic research do? So 361 individuals have responded. We've got a pretty good distribution of folks, some of whom have been self-trackers, some have not. And many are using a variety of these sites and applications and whatnot to capture data on themselves. What do they think about this? Are they willing to share these data with researchers? Well, the good news is they really are, either probably or definitely willing to share. And more importantly, Would they share it if they had a specific interest in the problem, a particular interest that might be driven by their family's concerns or others? Absolutely yes. And would they donate their data? Would they actually place these data into a repository of some sort to allow people to do it? Again, the good news is people are willing to do this. Data ownership. This is a very interesting thing we think, is that people who do this think that they own the data, even though they have signed a terms and conditions that almost invariably says the companies that have captured this data own the data themselves. So we see this as an important area that needs to be reconciled if we're going to be addressing this issue of sharing data and opening these data up to others. And do you want to own the data? They don't necessarily feel, many don't care, and that many of them do in fact want to own these data. So privacy, anonymity, and confidentiality, very, very important concerns on the part of the respondents. But it's a complex thing. It's not a monolithic concept. People have different levels of expectations with respect to privacy. Some happy to share with researchers, but they don't necessarily want their names published. Others have different feelings about this. In part, they don't want commercial uses of it, but they're happy to have more scientific uses done. So lots of issues that, at least from our reckoning of this now, suggest that we need to dig further into the issues of privacy and confidentiality of these data. Now, what about researchers? How do people like me think of this? So we had 100 people spend the 25 to 30 minutes filling out this survey, a wide range of researchers in both health settings and also in settings such as engineering and technology. And their sources of funding have been a variety. And almost half of these have used, in at least one of their studies, self-tracking data to date. Many think that a publicly available curated repository of donated data could be quite useful to them. And there's a strong majority that indicate that this will be useful for their research. So just a couple of snapshots of this, how useful. It shows the various types of data that these people are capturing, from vital signs to stress to mood activity. All the blue on here is actually very good news. These people do think that it will be useful. Moreover, when asked not only would this be useful, do they see any insurmountable barriers? The red on the left-hand side here is suggesting that no, they don't see insurmountable barriers. They really think that this is not only useful and of potentially high value, but that it can be trusted and that they don't present major issues to them in terms of conducting their research. Data sources, this is also good news, because when you ask these researchers if these data, if the self-tracked data are essentially as useful as anything that would be found in the peer-reviewed literature or in medical institution registries, they think it is, or they think it could be. So this is also quite good news, we think, in terms of what folks what might be willing to do. Because if you don't have these folks willing to do this kind of research, it's not necessarily going to happen. So preliminary results of our companies. We're in the midst now of doing our company interviews, key informant interviews with various people at various levels within these companies. Agreement in principle about the value of opening up these data. Terms of use provide considerable latitude to engage researchers, but there's zero tolerance for breach. Not surprising. People do not want privacy issues to reflect badly upon their company. Most companies, however, appear to be focusing on their device or their app. Most are not thinking, and these are the smaller to medium range companies, not necessarily thinking about how they're going to be taking these data, doing things with it, because they really want to get their service out there and get traction with their company. They have limited bandwidth to address these, and most do not have the resources or the wherewithal to have an internal research and development shop. So informed consent, a real challenge. It's bedrock concern in the area of research, that people who engage in research need to be informed of the risks of how their data might be used. Most click-through licenses that we click on and that others click on when they use your Fitbit device or other things, and the terms and conditions of use that allow sharing of information with third parties would not pass muster in my institutional review board or the institutional review boards of any of the researchers that we know. So there are real issues related to how these can be constructed in positive and appropriate ways. The ecosystem of devices and apps is rapidly outpacing current methods of informed consent. There's some very promising activities underway right now with the portable legal consent framework that's under development by the Consented Research Initiative and Sage Bionetworks. Dynamic consent, an initiative I just heard about at a meeting in London a few days ago by Jane Kay at colleagues at Oxford, and then the peer network developed by Sharon Terry of the Genetic Alliance. These are promising strategies that might allow us to move into a new era of sharing these newer forms of data with researchers that also respect individuals' rights and prerogatives with respect to the use of them. But this is a very dynamic area right now. So summary and future directions on this project. Individuals are willing to share their health and medical data for research purposes, especially if it benefits others. Importantly, they feel they should own their data. Researchers are willing to trust person and patient-generated data if it helps them answer their research questions, and companies seem open to sharing this. Privacy is important, but has many dimensions that aren't well understood at present. And today's informed consent is not tomorrow's. We need to work on this. And there are lots of conceptual, methodological, and practical issues that need to be addressed for these data to be opened up. So we're still gathering input, and we'd like to hear from you on this. It would be terrific to hear from anybody at this meeting. I'll be at one of the open sessions here in about 20 minutes, and you can contact us at hdexplore.cal-IT.2.net or connect with me, and there's our hashtag. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present on this exciting initiative, and appreciate it.